be your ideal two-car garage. Wait, there is a catch. Both cars must have the same engine.
Once you start mulling it over, there are actually more choices than you might first imagine. However, I think I've got the perfect duo. The latest Honda Civic Type R is one of them, and this is the other. This is the new Ariel Atom 4R. The Ariel Motor Company has actually been making Atoms in rural Somerset for nearly a quarter of a century now, but I think the exoskeleton design looks just as wild as ever. If you like being able to see what you're paying for, then this is definitely the car for you. Talking of which, the new, more powerful, more track-focused R version of the Atom 4 starts at £78,000, although this particular example with things like the added aero and carbon wheels and carbon brakes is nearly double that. But what about the engine that connects these two?
It is the inspiringly named K20C engine from Honda, which means it's 2 litres, all aluminium and turbocharged. In here, it puts out 324 brake horsepower and 310 pounds-foot of torque, while over here, thanks to significantly better cooling and some better breathing on the intake side, it puts out up to 400 brake horsepower and 369 pounds-foot of torque. Now, it's not the most charismatic engine, but it is attached to 2 brilliant drivers' cars.
And to really experience what all that feels like, you need a track. Preferably a beautiful one, like Anglesey. But while I'm donning my crash helmet and wondering if it's going to be dry, damp, wet, or the sort of weather that gets animals pairing up and looking for a chap called Noah, I've got just enough time to recommend a subscription to the Hagerty Drivers Club, which comes with myriad benefits such as an award-winning magazine and full access to the fascinating Hagerty online valuation tool. If you'd like to support the show, then just click on the link in the description down below.
Welcome to the Ariel Atom 4R in the wet. Even in weather like this, I love the Ariel Atom. Cars like this, so much fun. I love the fact, obviously, in an Atom, you can see those front wheels, see everything going on, see the new carbon ceramic brakes on this. This has carbon wheels as well. All round it saves 26 kilos of unsprung mass. Choo choo choo. Wow. So for the first time we've got a Bosch ABS system, a 12-stage ABS system. And we've got variable boost in here as well. So 1 down around about 300 brake horsepower, and then if you turn it up to 2, you actually get all the power and torque. So all 400 brake horsepower, 369 pounds-foot of torque. The difference between 2 and 3 is just how aggressive really the throttle map is.
Stage 2 is more linear, while Stage 3 is a bit more theatrical. There is also a 7-stage variable traction control system on the Atom for the first time, but although it feels like a nice safety blanket to have, the 4R is actually very manageable and controllable, even with everything turned off.
To be honest, you might look at the specs of this car, 400 brake horsepower, 650 kilos there or thereabouts, and you probably think that must be like putting a saddle and a harness on a grizzly bear. But with this Atom 4 chassis, with the larger tubes making it a bit stiffer, and then the added extra anti-dive, anti-squat geometry, it's such a beautifully balanced car.
Riding the curbs while sideways in the wet sounds like a recipe for disaster, but this latest Atom 4R makes it feel almost easy. The beauty of the Öhlins TTX 36 dampers is definitely more than skin deep.
This car is also tricked out with the new aero package, which produces 110 kilos of downforce at 70 miles an hour. Not to be sniffed at.
Aesthetically, that rear wing reminds me of those slightly awkward 2009 Formula 1 cars when they went narrow and tall, but there is apparently genuine CFD reasoning behind it, so that it works with the intake and balances downforce and drag. The other big-ticket item that you've probably noticed on the R is the Quaife pneumatically operated 6-speed sequential gearbox.
And the lovely thing about having the paddle shift is that you can left foot brake, and that's a really nice thing to have in an Ariel Atom, because as you can tell, obviously all the weight is over the back end, so it really helps being able to left foot brake and just trail it all the way up to an apex. And now with the security of ABS, if your left foot isn't quite as sensitive as you'd like on the brakes, well, you've got a bit of backup. In some ways, who needs a hypercar? I don't think there's a hypercar out there that would make you feel more alive than this.
No, it hasn't got a sonorous, naturally aspirated V12 or V8, nor the history or kudos of an Aston or Ferrari, but for sheer synapse fizzing performance, it really does stack up.
0 to 60 in 2.7 seconds, 0 to 106.5. And it is... Whoa, just take some and go! I mean, really, this would be fine as your only car. It's even got a reversing camera. But what if you need to carry one of these?
Even if you don't have one of those, you might just want somewhere to put a cup.
Or an entire coffee machine, because the Civic Type R really is quite big for a hot hatch these days. But it still nails the touch points, like the steering wheel, pedals and gear lever, that make it a delight to drive every day.
To top it all off, you've got these fantastic seats, which are, well, they're as supportive as those amazing carbon back ones in a BMW M3, but also really comfortable. One thing I'm not so sure about on the road is the ride. There just doesn't seem to be quite that Goldilocks setting that was on the FK8 facelift car. This, between sport and race, it feels like you need a setting just somewhere in there. The other thing is the engine, because it doesn't have, well, the greatest soundtrack to keep you company. Come back, naturally aspirated VTEC.
There's no denying the smooth performance of the four-cylinder though, something you really notice back on track, where the whole car just seems to inspire confidence, whatever the weather.
Another reason I think this works as part of a two-car garage now is that, well, it looks a little less dramatic, a little less in your face than the previous generations of Civic Type R. It really does feel more acceptable to use every day, a little less look at me, and you certainly don't need that if you've got an Atom in the garage as well. Other things I love about this Civic, the limited slip diff in the front I think is fantastic, particularly on the road, because it doesn't lock up too aggressively. Sometimes we've seen cars that just seem to want to dive towards an apex as soon as you get on the throttle, and that's not the case with this. You just feel you can meter out the power. And while obviously the Ariel has got that incredible paddle shift in this, well, it satisfies all your 3-pedal manual desires. It is such a good manual shift, this.
It's a really entertaining hot hatch, and it would certainly make a good track day alternative to the Ariel if you woke up on the morning of the event and discovered it was raining.
Or you could just get wet in the Atom.
Give me an Atom on a rainy day, and I'm happy.
I could have chosen an Aston Martin Vantage and a Mercedes E63 for this test, or a Ferrari 812 and a Pura Sangue, or a Morgan and a BMW Touring, but I really do think that this pair is pretty perfect. Arguably, you wouldn't even really need a 4R, just a standard Atom 4 for £40,000 would suit me. That would make two brilliant cars totalling under 100k. In fact, forget the whole same engine stipulation. These two just make a brilliant two-car garage.